They thought I would pack a cardboard box, take the severance, and disappear quietly at 5:03 p.m. By 8:17 the next morning, the CEO was staring at an email that put a $290 million contract and his own career on the edge of collapse. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't even argue. I forwarded one clause. A clause I wrote myself. And then I let gravity do what gravity always does. If you've ever wondered what happens when nepotism collides with someone who actually reads the fine print, stay with me. My name is Evelyn Harper. I was the Director of Federal Compliance at Solaris Meridian Consulting for 9 years. I was almost 40, chronically caffeinated, and professionally invisible. The coffee in our 8th floor break room tasted like burnt ambition and recycled regret. The machine screamed every time it brewed, a metallic shriek that felt symbolic. That machine worked harder than half the executive team. Solaris Meridian wasn't a global titan. We were a mid-tier consultancy clinging to relevance. And in practical terms, we had one lifeline, a $290 million federal compliance contract with NorthRiver Grid Energy. That contract paid the salaries, funded the executive bonuses, and justified the glass offices upstairs. Lose NorthRiver, and the company didn't dip, it imploded. I was the firewall on that account. The one crawling through the ventilation shafts of our contracts, sealing regulatory leaks before federal inspectors could smell smoke. Department of Energy filings. EPA compliance audits. Security certifications. If something was off by a decimal point, I was the one who fixed it at 2 in the morning while the sales team slept peacefully, dreaming of commissions. Infrastructure is invisible until it fails. I was infrastructure. 18 months before everything exploded, we nearly lost NorthRiver. A subcontractor falsified certification records. It could have triggered federal investigations and multi-million-dollar penalties. I spent 72 hours on emergency calls, drafted mitigation frameworks, negotiated directly with their general counsel, and rebuilt trust line by line. After it was over, while our CEO, Gregory Langford, congratulated the client-facing leadership team, I stayed behind and rewrote part of the contract. That was when Amendment 12B was born. Continuity of liaison. Dry. Dense. Boring enough to make most executives skim. It specified that, due to the sensitive federal nature of the engagement, the designated compliance liaison had to be approved in writing by NorthRiver's general counsel. It named me specifically. Evelyn Harper. Any removal, reassignment, or alteration required prior written consent from the client. No consent, no change. Their legal department skimmed it. Stamped it. Filed it. But NorthRiver's general counsel, Adrienne Ruiz, did not skim. She read every word. She called me directly. Evelyn, she said, this language locks you in. I told her, calmly, it locks in continuity. There was a pause. Then she said, keep it. That was the moment the trap closed, quietly, invisibly, legally. 6 months later, Gregory's daughter arrived. Madison Langford. Fresh MBA. Social media polished. Newly appointed Executive Vice President of Strategic Integration, a title that meant absolutely nothing. She glided through the executive floor like a perfume ad with a corner office. She talked about synergy and innovation. She carried a tablet she never used. Her strategy started appearing in my meetings. During one quarterly review with NorthRiver, we were discussing federal substation security compliance. Madison joined 10 minutes late with an iced oat milk latte. She interrupted mid-sentence and asked if NorthRiver had ever considered converting part of their generation facility into a client experience rooftop lounge. Adrienne Ruiz didn't blink. The silence was surgical. I redirected the call back to compliance penalties and filing deadlines. Afterward, I apologized privately for the distraction. Adrienne's response was simple. just keep her away from my infrastructure. But Madison saw NorthRiver as branding potential. She wanted to rename my department the Client Confidence Lab. I told her our clients weren't seeking confidence. They were trying to avoid federal indictment. That conversation made me an obstacle in her eyes. High salary. Resistant to modernization. Not aligned with strategic evolution. Then came automation. Madison became obsessed with replacing technical reviews with digital checklists. We can streamline compliance, she insisted. It's just structured forms. Structured forms don't negotiate with federal regulators. Structured forms don't interpret evolving policy guidance. But nuance doesn't trend well on social media. On a Thursday at 4:52 p.m., a calendar invite appeared. No subject. HR conference room. 5 p.m. I didn't feel fear. I felt inevitability. End-of-day Thursday meetings are rarely celebrations. I grabbed the hard copy of the NorthRiver audit response I had just completed, 40 pages of regulatory precision, and walked downstairs. Never enter an ambush empty-handed. The room was cold and windowless. HR sat stiff and silent. Madison occupied the power seat. She didn't look up from her phone at first. When she did, her tone was rehearsed. We're evolving organizational structure, she said. Your role is being absorbed into strategy. I looked at her. So I'm being fired. She flinched. Not fired. Eliminated. The vocabulary of corporate cowardice. They slid a separation agreement across the table. 6 months' pay. A 12-month non-compete. Aggressive non-disclosure language. Sign within 21 days to receive compensation. I skimmed calmly until my eyes landed on the deadline date. 21 days from today. The exact date Amendment 12B automatically renewed for another 5-year term unless terminated 30 days prior. No one had filed termination. The clause was about to renew. Ironclad. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I slid the envelope back across the table. No questions, I said. And I left. At home, I poured a $12 Cabernet and opened my personal encrypted drive. I keep records. Executed PDFs, timestamped amendments. Internal memos. I pulled up Contract 7Q290. Amendment 12B, I reread the language slowly. Any removal of the designated liaison without prior written consent shall constitute material breach. And then the subclause Adrienne insisted on adding, in the event of unilateral removal, NorthRiver reserved the right to transfer the engagement to an approved independent consultant to ensure continuity. 3 months earlier, during a stressful audit, Adrienne had joked, if they ever push you out, would you start your own firm? I didn't treat it as a joke. The next day, I formed Harper Continuity Advisory LLC. A dormant shell company. $200. Insurance against chaos. At 10:14 p.m., I drafted an email to Gregory Langford, the CFO, and legal. Formal notice of potential material breach. I attached the executed contract. Then I blind copied Adrienne Ruiz. At 8:17 a.m., Gregory received her reply. This appears to constitute material breach of contract 7Q290. We are re-evaluating our relationship. Re-evaluating. Corporate language for the floor just opened beneath you. By 10 a.m., NorthRiver suspended all work. Portals locked. Projects frozen. Revenue halted. Panic rippled from executive offices down to the cubicles. Legal scrambled for loopholes. None existed. The clause was surgical. Clear. Signed. And that was just the first domino. By Friday evening, the board discovered something worse. Solaris had an internal anti-nepotism governance policy enacted after a prior scandal. It explicitly prohibited direct relatives of the CEO from unilaterally terminating client-mandated roles. Amendment 12B had listed my name as protected. Madison had violated not only the client contract, but her father's own governance agreement. That night, I wasn't in a boardroom. I was at a small cafe patio across town, meeting Dana Mitchell, a partner at Blackbridge Consulting. Adrienne had called her. Not to sue Solaris. To transfer the contract. The clause didn't just punish breach. It empowered NorthRiver to appoint a new independent consultant. Me. Harper Continuity Advisory would become primary vendor. Blackbridge would serve as subcontractor for scale. I remember staring at my coffee as the weight shifted. I wasn't negotiating re-employment. I was inheriting the engagement. Madison thought she eliminated redundancy. Instead, she activated contingency. By Friday evening, Solaris Meridian Consulting was no longer a company managing a crisis. It was a company in freefall. And the terrifying part for them was this: the fall was quiet. There was no public scandal yet. No headlines. No social media storm. Just locked systems, frozen revenue, and the slow realization that the clause they had signed without reading had teeth. At 6 p.m., the board convened an emergency session. No assistants. No observers. Just executives and 8 board members staring at a single printed document, Amendment 12B. Gregory Langford looked 10 years older than he had that morning. The CFO projected numbers on the screen. If NorthRiver walked permanently, Solaris wouldn't just lose $290 million over the term. The preference clauses in adjacent contracts meant 2 secondary accounts would likely follow. The conservative estimate? A $140 million impact within the next fiscal cycle. Stock price decline. Investor panic. Credit rating review. Then legal spoke. This is not ambiguous, the general counsel said flatly. The termination of Evelyn Harper without prior written consent constitutes material breach. Additionally, internal governance policy prohibits direct relatives of the CEO from unilaterally terminating protected client-mandated roles. Madison Langford executed the termination. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. One board member finally leaned forward. So to summarize, he said slowly, the CEO's daughter violated both the client contract and internal governance. And we have lost administrative access to our largest account because of it. Gregory didn't defend her. He couldn't. The paperwork was clear. The signatures were visible. His signature was visible. At 8:42 p.m., NorthRiver's second email arrived. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't angry. It was administrative. Effective immediately, NorthRiver Grid Energy is exercising its right under Amendment 12B to suspend engagement and evaluate transfer to an approved independent consultant. Evaluate. What Solaris didn't know yet was that the evaluation was already finished. While they argued in a windowless boardroom, I was finalizing capacity agreements with Dana Mitchell at Blackbridge Consulting. We weren't celebrating. We were building structure. Insurance certificates. Subcontracting frameworks. Staffing contingencies. Transition timelines. Everything Solaris had failed to prepare for, we prepared in 12 hours. Saturday morning, Adrienne Ruiz called me directly. Evelyn, she said, voice calm as ever, if NorthRiver designates Harper Continuity Advisory as the independent consultant under 12B, can you ensure uninterrupted compliance reporting? Yes, I answered. No hesitation. No theatrics. Then prepare for transfer documentation, she replied. By Sunday evening, NorthRiver's legal team had completed the vendor substitution paperwork. Clean. Precise. Efficient. Solaris was not part of the drafting process. They were not consulted. They were not asked for approval. The clause did not require it. Monday, 7:12 a.m., the email hit Solaris executive inboxes simultaneously. Subject, Vendor Update, Contract 7Q290. One sentence. NorthRiver Grid Energy will now be working through Harper Continuity Advisory LLC as the primary vendor of record. That was it. No accusation. No explanation. Just replacement. I wasn't in a cafe this time. I was in a small leased office space on the 10th floor of a quiet glass building downtown. Fresh paint. Bare walls. A desk. A laptop. And the NorthRiver vendor portal open in front of me. The old vendor name, Solaris Meridian Consulting, had been replaced. Harper Continuity Advisory LLC now appeared as primary vendor. Primary liaison, Evelyn Harper. The system didn't care about corporate hierarchy. It cared about documentation. My phone buzzed. Gregory Langford. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. Finally, voicemail. Evelyn, we need to talk. We can fix this. We can bring you back in a leadership role. Equity. Bonus. Name your price. Just, help us stabilize NorthRiver. He still thought this was negotiation. He still thought I was an employee who wanted reinstatement. I forwarded the voicemail to Adrienne with one sentence, per your direction, routing all communication from former vendor through your office. Former vendor. Back at Solaris, the fallout was accelerating. Investors were calling. Institutional partners were requesting clarification. Rumors spread internally that Madison had triggered the breach. By Tuesday morning, the board had made two decisions. Madison Langford was terminated effective immediately. Gregory Langford was encouraged to resign prior to market open. Neither decision restored the contract. Solaris attempted one last maneuver. Their legal department drafted a proposal offering to reinstate me as an external consultant to transition the work back. The problem was simple. The clause didn't grant Solaris recovery rights. It granted NorthRiver discretion. And NorthRiver had already exercised it. Inside my new office, I began making calls. 3 senior analysts from Solaris reached out over the weekend. Talented. Competent. Non-political. They didn't need convincing. They needed stability. By Wednesday, I had extended formal offers. Competitive salary. Equity participation. Transparent structure. No rooftop lounges. Blackbridge's infrastructure scaled instantly. Payroll. Insurance. IT. We didn't scramble. We executed. On Thursday afternoon, I had my first official strategy call as primary vendor. Adrienne joined the video conference. Continuity confirmed, she said. Reporting cycles remain intact. Transition complete. The word complete felt heavier than victory. It wasn't revenge. It was replacement. Across town, Solaris buildings still stood tall, their logo still illuminated at the top. But the fourth quarter projections had collapsed. Internal emails later described it as structural contraction. That's corporate language for survival mode. Layoffs. Asset sales. Reputation damage control. Madison attempted to reach me twice more. One voicemail was angry. You manipulated the contract. The second was pleading. I didn't realize. But realization is irrelevant when signatures exist. Here's the part most people misunderstand. This was never about humiliation. It was never about showing them up in a boardroom. It was about risk mitigation. I wrote Amendment 12B after a crisis to protect a client from instability. Solaris created the instability. The clause performed exactly as designed. There's something almost mathematical about it. Action. Consequence. Enforcement. By Friday, the first retainer payment processed under Harper Continuity Advisory. I didn't smile. I didn't post about it. I updated spreadsheets. I reviewed compliance documentation. I built hiring frameworks. Because here's the truth. Power isn't loud. It's procedural. Solaris Meridian thought eliminating my role would streamline costs. Instead, they eliminated their own leverage. They mistook invisibility for insignificance. They confused silence with weakness. But contracts don't care about ego. They care about language. When the dust settled, I printed one document and pinned it to the wall of my new office. Amendment 12B, Continuity of Liaison. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Never rely on recognition. Rely on documentation. Months later, I heard Solaris was restructuring under new leadership. The board survived. The brand survived. But they never regained NorthRiver. Once trust transfers, it rarely returns. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not signing the severance and walking away quietly. I don't. Because walking away quietly would have meant ignoring the clause designed to prevent exactly what happened. They thought I'd leave with a cardboard box. Instead, I left with continuity. And here's what I want you to remember. If you're the person in the room who reads every line, who checks every footnote, who catches the risk everyone else ignores, you are not redundant. You are structural. Never underestimate the quiet architect. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever been underestimated at work? Have you ever watched leadership make a decision they didn't fully understand? I want to hear your story. If you believe in strategy over drama, hit the like button. And subscribe to the channel for more stories where intelligence wins without shouting. Because sometimes, the most powerful move in the room is simply reading the fine print.